Welcome to PhD with Women on It, Hack the Future. My name is Beata Young, and today's PhD positivity hack delivered will be by our guest, Chris Hood. Topic: how to get digital transformation right with Google. Episode 84 starts here. This is midday in Malta. I'm calling you from Valletta, and this is how it used to be signaled. Analog way to signal to all the sailors around the world that Malta has just reached midday. So, as you can see, we are recording today with Chris, and let me remind you, this is a grassroots community that focuses on women on IT, an inclusive forum of women in technology, startups, and female leaders who are supported by men as well. And I bring heart to that hustle because empathy is my mojo, and empathy is critical when you are getting digital transformation right with Google. In today's episode, we are going to learn how to get digital transformation right. How do you keep your business moving forward when you're stuck in the middle of an information superhighway? A good digital transformation strategy is like a roadmap for your company. It will help you navigate the digital world and find new ways to grow your business. It's not enough to just start using new technology. You need to think about how your business can be disrupted by the technology and what it will take for you to keep on top of your game when the change takes hold. We are joined by Chris Hood, a digital strategist, podcast host, and writer. He is a veteran of the digital entertainment industry with more than 3 decades of working across various mediums, including television, film, music, and video games. Chris is the head of business innovation and strategy at Google. His leadership and strategic insights on digital and business transformation have fueled countless enterprises' digital success. At Google, he's been fortunate enough to keep his pulse on the media and entertainment industry with strategic participation in industry solutions and developing incredible digital experiences across all of the mediums. Chris, let's start with a simple question. Where in the world are you today?
Well, hello, and thank you for having me. Where in the world am I? I'm in New York City, and I flew in actually late last night and arrived for a conference here today. So yes, the beautiful city of New York.
That's fantastic, but normally you're not based in the Big Apple. What's your location?
Yeah, normally I am in the Los Angeles, California area. So I spend a lot of time in the sunny weather. Now I'm in the cold weather. It's supposed to rain today. So I enjoy both, though. It's always fun to travel around and see the different sides of the coast.
Absolutely. Well, it's going to be hot with this topic today. Chris, really appreciate the fact that you woke up to be at 6 o'clock in the morning to be fresh, and we're going to bring some ideas about digital transformation. So let's start with a simple question. What exactly is digital transformation? How do you define it?
Yeah, there's some challenges actually in defining digital transformation. It's been a term that we've used in a lot of different spaces now, and I think what has happened is people have tried to adjust the definition to meet their specific sales needs. But let's dissect what digital transformation really is. The concept was that technology was transforming at an accelerated pace and actually at a pace where most enterprises and organizations were unable to keep up with the change in technology. And what was at the center of that was the consumer who was engaged with that technology. So imagine you as a consumer going to a grocery store and wanting to pay with your Apple Pay or your iPhone or mobile device, or even at the time a debit card. And that grocery store was not accepting that form of payment. That's the pace. That's the expectation of the consumer to go into the businesses that they want to engage with and engage with those businesses on the technology that they want to engage with you with. And if the organization is unable to keep up with that demand, they've got to make changes, which usually takes time and resources to do it. And thus became, how do you digitally transform in order to keep up with those demands? And like I said, over time, we've altered the definition in a lot of different ways. But I think if we were to really simplify this, digital transformation is less about the technology itself. It's actually more about the consumer perspective, because that's what it's really all about. Is a consumer wants to engage with a business and they want to do so through a technology, and you've got to be able to support that technology in some way so that that consumer and their transformation needs is met.
Fantastic definition. Thank you so much for breaking it down, Chris. I remember the fact that in 2013, I opened a cafe, a co-working space in the middle of Poland, and I was one of the first adopters of Bitcoin, and I accepted payments in Bitcoin. And actually, I never took the money out of wallet, because the number of transactions I had in Bitcoin at that time, within 2 years, I think I could count them, without using Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So, right, is it a right approach to go ahead of consumer needs, or would you advise to wait for transformation and watch what everybody is doing?
Yeah, that's a fabulous question, actually. And it's a question that a lot of companies struggle with, is how far ahead do I go? And I think the basis that you have to consider is, what technology can you bring in that is foundational, that will help you to evolve when you don't necessarily know what the future is going to be. So, for example, that's where Google Cloud comes in, or cloud products. The cloud in general is designed in a way so that you can evolve and transform as consumer demands and expectations evolve and go alongside of that. And so if you think about the technology as building blocks, and I have to have those correct building blocks in place, then I think you're good. If you do spend too much time trying to predict the future and get things in place because you believe that's where the industry or the trends are going to go, then you may run into the situation where you're spending money, time, resources, collaboration, partnerships on things that, like your Bitcoin example, never actually see the light of day. And so I would say that there's a strategy in here where you have to start somewhere. And if you think about it holistically and everything that you want to try to accomplish, then that just becomes a part of those building blocks that you have to consider. And then you go along with the flow of technology and consumer behavior, and you do your research and you capture data and you analyze it, and then you make those adjustments as they come about.
I'm a big advocate for Google. I'm actually a Women Tech Makers Google ambassador, so you don't have to convince me here. Although I struggled a bit. So just to give you a little bit of insight, in 2005, I joined a company in London, and I was trying to convince them to use Google Cloud and use the excellent Google Hangout. Now it's renamed a couple of years later. However, the problem I had, it was landing on deaf ears. We had our team spread across various countries all over the globe, India, US, Bulgaria, and I could not convince the C-suite management to embrace technology. How can somebody like me make the C-suite focus on the technologies that are so far ahead that it would be very difficult to ignore. I mean, the benefits are outweighing the risks sometimes.
Yeah, I think this is all about understanding what is needed and then presenting the data that backs up that. So let's just take technology out of the conversation. And let's say that it's not technology that I'm trying to convince the C-suite of, but it's some type of marketing strategy or some type of sales strategy or some type of hiring strategy. Like you can fill in the blank with any role within an organization. And how do you present that? You present a marketing campaign, you show what you're hoping to accomplish. Same thing with hiring, sales strategies, and then you back that up with data, right? You can show how your competitors are doing it. You can show how if you do XYZ, this amount of sales is going to come in, and you do research and you demonstrate that. I think technology becomes no different in that type of equation. You have to be able to demonstrate what it's going to do, what problem it's going to solve, and what are you going to get in return. So I talk to a lot of C-level with our customers, and I talk about very deep topics in technology sometimes, but then I typically get the response, yes, but how much is that going to cost us? You know, you could fill in the blank. And I say, well, what if I can prove to you that if you do this, you're going to generate an extra $50 million in revenue? Well, typically they say, oh, yeah, okay, I'm listening. how do I accomplish that? Well, I can then prove and show through other examples and customers that we've engaged with how you can exactly go about it to generate that additional revenue. And for any CEO that is listening and says, okay, I invest $1 million in this technology and I generate $50 million from that investment, no one's going to say no. If they do, then the argument is they probably shouldn't be in the role that they're in, unfortunately. But you have to be able to prove your case out beyond just saying, hey, look, everybody's doing it. We should be doing it too. Well, what is it going to actually do? What's the problem it's going to solve? And what are we going to get from that? And if you can prove operational efficiency or collaboration that's going to generate sales in some perspective, then typically it becomes a no-brainer. If they still say no, or they still try to squash it, then you've got to move on and try some other strategies to prove that out.
Beautiful example. We are talking about big bucks. However, does it mean that digital transformation is only for big players?
No. Digital transformation is for anyone and everyone. I would even argue that you can do more digital transformation at a startup or even at a mom and pop type of cafe than the larger organizations can accomplish. The more people that you get involved with that process, the harder change is. If you've got an organization with 1,000 people, it's going to be a lot more challenging to change that group than it is if you only have a team of 5 people. And this isn't a financial thing. Just like I don't believe digital transformation at the heart is actually a digital challenge, this is a cultural challenge. This is all about perspective and getting the organization to realize that they're going to have to leverage that technology to meet the demands of consumers. And so if you have that consumer first perspective, then you have to start thinking, well, how are we going to change our organization and our culture to start to look at data, to analyze those results, to streamroll processes, to implement opportunities for innovation so that we can innovate these ideas and bring new technologies in that are going to allow us to reach those customers So it's going to be one of those constant things that have to start at the cultural level of the organization. And again, typically a smaller organization can make that culture shift sooner.
Much faster at much lower cost. I agree with you, Chris. With the business world changing rapidly, it is important to be able to adapt to what's happening now, as well as be prepared for what comes next. It's no secret that the age of automation is not just on its way, it's here. The World Economic Forum recently estimated that 1.4 million people will lose their jobs by 2026 as a result of technological change, with more than 70% of those job losses happening because the job type will cease to exist. How important in digital transformation is digital upskilling?
Yeah, I would probably challenge those numbers. I haven't looked at the report, but it's interesting. Every time I see a report that talks about job loss due to automation, they don't really ever take into account all the new jobs that are being created because of automation. And so, yeah, there are going to be certain jobs that are going to cease to exist, but there's going to be brand new jobs that are going to materialize to support this. And I think first and foremost, automation is critical. Automation is critical for a lot of reasons beyond just automating a task, like the basic foundation. I want to do this task and I want to do it without, much effort. There's a lot of great movie references and I think TV references of like somebody sitting at a desk. I think the Jetsons, it just came to me. Like if you've ever watched the cartoon show from the 60s and 70s, the Jetsons, and George Jetson would go into work and all he would do is he would press a button. And all day long, he would just sit there and press a button and it would create new spacely sprockets, right? And I think a lot of us want that type of reality where we can just come into work, press a button, sit back, drink coffee all day, and let somebody else, let the computer do all the work for us. Yes, okay, so the basic foundation of automation is that. But automation is going to help you in a lot of really unique ways, such as the governance and security of your data. When we think about how we develop new applications or new technology, when we have a human going through and validating things, we have room for error. And when it comes to things like system security, especially of your customer data, as an example, that is something that you don't want to risk getting exposed. So hackers or system malfunctions that expose critical private data, that can all be regulated and supported, managed, validated through automation. And so if we think about automation in a way that is going to actually protect the business from a security threat or from a privacy leak, then that's a whole new way that we could think about it. Yes, absolutely. Automation also includes I press a button and something happens. But automation has been around for a long time. Like Microsoft Excel, the spreadsheet, has services called macros. Macros have been around for 30 years, which help me automate a spreadsheet task. It's just gotten a lot more complicated and complex, and it's great. But I say we don't think about it as just this task-oriented thing, and we think about it as a way to improve the products and services transformation that we provide back out to our customers.
Absolutely, Chris. I love this Jetsons story. We are all longing for a computer scrolling our Instagram for us. Now, what successful digital technologies, initiative, or best practices has your organization created, Chris?
Well, from a best practice perspective, I think Google is really at the forefront of understanding cultural and transformative types of strategies. And when we think about an organization that has to go through this digital transformation and those foundational technologies that you need in place to support the building blocks of the future, as well as building cultures that understand how to integrate people into a mindset to support change and innovation and growth and those cultural shifts. Google, in my experience, has done it better than anybody. And I've worked at a lot of different types of companies throughout a lot of different types of industries. And for sure, Google has done something really remarkable, which is also why it's considered one of the best places to work. And so I think there's a lot of reading materials and references that are out there that you can go look at. You can find them on Google search, or you can just go to like google.com, and Google Cloud even has some resources that are all around things like how do you create a culture of innovation? How do you create digital strategies within your organization that is going to support growth and opportunity? And even down to things like when we talk about building a culture of this innovation and success, it's also around diversity and our hiring practices, and how do you remove bias in those processes so that we bring in the right people all of the time. And there's some fabulous materials that are out there that I suggest everybody go and find and read.
So, talking about removing biases, this is fascinating, Chris, because I believe it's Google who, based on our clickability, chooses less exciting jobs for women than for men. And it's our fault because we do that over and over. We choose jobs description that are less skills required and less rigid or less ambitious than men. Has Google managed to tackle this problem?
Well, I can walk you through the basic concept of the hiring practice, and we could dive into that more if you want. But I would say that just what you said, the challenges around what you even apply for starts with you, all of us individually. If I go and I choose to apply for a new role, that's ultimately my decision, right? I want to go try something new, go do it. So it starts with you because you have to go to the career section, scroll through all of the different jobs and find the job that you want to apply for and actually submit your application. Every job starts with an opportunity that you partake in. From there, though, where it gets interesting at Google is I say we remove this bias from the hiring process. Because what happens is every single application and resume is anonymized. We don't necessarily know who one person is or another person is. And then even as it goes through the hiring process, the hiring manager rarely actually is involved with the interview process. We get outside stakeholders that are familiar with the culture of Google that we want to adhere to, and we bring those outside employees in for the interview. So if you make the interview process standardized for everyone, then you don't have to worry about, this person asking this type of question and another person asking a different type of question, or this person grading the interview in one way and another person grading it in a different way. So there's a standardized hiring process and a standardized practice and an anonymized applicant. And then we bring in people, we interview them. And then when we even respond with our feedback, all of that feedback has to be anonymized. So we remove pronouns as an example. We don't know if you're a male or female, or fill in the blank. So when it goes through the hiring committee, all they are doing is looking at the feedback without knowing, is this a female or not? And so if you apply for a role you want and you're the right candidate, we've removed the bias in that process by standardizing all of the hiring practices and removing pronouns from that feedback. Now, when it gets to a hiring committee to make the decision, all it is does this check, does this check, does this check, hand that off and make an offer. So it's really fascinating. And it's also, from my experience, extremely challenging for most organizations to do. Like if I could pull 20 different businesses right now today and say, is the hiring manager involved with your hiring process? Like, do they get to pick who they bring onto their team? All 20 of them are going to say yes. And at Google, we say no.
Beautiful. Do you also assist as Google with this part of digital transformation in hiring processes?
Well, other than me just sharing what our process is, I challenge everybody. I go, try to do it yourself. Like, why couldn't you? And I've had these conversations. Well, we just don't operate in that way. Exactly. That's exactly right. Why don't you? Right. And have you tried or change it? I mean, it's just boils down to just make the change. If you want to be able to hire without bias, change your hiring practice. It's not complicated, but
absolutely,
you've got, yeah, go ahead.
Otherwise, you're going to have white guys talking to white guys about other white guys, as Cindy Gallop points out. Right. Let's refocus on digital transformation and what it means for companies, because I think we are facing the big employment gap or skills gap all across the globe. Is digital transformation only for digital savvy people, and do you need professional certification to develop digital transformation for your company?
No. Digital transformation is a term no different than a term like supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. It's a term. You can go to any number of websites and read the official definition, which, like I said, has evolved over time. And once you understand what the definition is, you have successfully mastered a class in digital transformation. Now, there are a lot of universities out there that are offering a certification in digital transformation, that are diving into leadership strategies and the such. I simplify it as this. Again, let's just remove digital from the word. It's just transformation. So how do you help organizations transform? Digital just happens to be the case because we're in a digital world. Technology is everywhere. We're on technology right now as we speak. So digital is required. Transformation is the hard part. And no matter what you try to transform, once again, whether it's trying to transform your hiring practices or transforming the way you interact with your customers or transforming how you reach those customers in some way or how you connect digitally, it's all transformation. And mostly I would say this is a mindset. This is understanding that in order to transform, you need to get people involved. You need to get the organization and leadership, like your example with your C-suite and Google Meets and Hangouts. You've got to get people involved. You've got to get people understanding. You've got to also look at data. You've got to be able to back that up and say, we need to transform because the data is showing us we've got to do this. And as long as you can understand that premise, you can become a master of digital transformation. and change management. There's lots of degrees out there around change management within an organization. To me, it's all the same.
Well, so in order to address the skill shortage, should companies employ outsource training for their workers, or should they retrain themselves inside the company? What would be best advice from your experience how to navigate if there is no skills within the company to take it through the process of transformation?
Yeah, I definitely think that there's opportunity to bring consultants, bring people in, have educational challenges, do different activities that drive that transformation that you're looking for. And whether that's just building some skills to help understand what transformation is and how you go about it, whether that's even starting with teams on transforming themselves so you can build that culture that supports it. So we go back to the hiring example. If you even started there and say, here's how we're going to continue to hire, well, it's going to take some time potentially to get that transformation or that change within the organization to populate across the organization. So start small, pick one thing and change that. And then start to get data and see how it performs, and then pick something else and change that. But I recommend to anybody, go find a class, go find a certification, go find a lecture, go listen to podcasts that deal with this type of thought process. Find books. There's plenty of books out there that talk about transformation and change, and encourage your employees and your teams to be able to do that, or even enable them, whether that's bringing something in or somebody in to do the training. Offer books for free. Like say, hey, go buy this book and the company will pay for it. Or if it's a small enough team, go buy a bunch of books and hand them out to the team. And I think there's a lot of different ways that you can encourage that and grow those experiences and understanding, beyond just having somebody come in with a lesson plan.
Chris, from your experience, you mentioned the culture of the company and mindset. It's so much easier to change policies or implement new digital transformation than change the mindset. From your experience, where have you experienced the most resistance? How did you and your team respond?
Yeah, I think it just depends on the individuals that are involved with it and their perspective. And I said earlier that sometimes changing a smaller organization is easier than a larger organization because you've got less people to shift their mindsets. But I have found that even in smaller organizations, for example, if the owner has their mindset in a specific way and the owner of a startup business does not want to change that perspective, then it's going to be almost impossible to get them to change. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, if they don't do it, they go out of business. And I've seen countless startups go out of business simply because the owner refused to change their own mindset and bring along everybody on their team for what's best. And so those smaller organizations do have that challenge from an owner perspective, sort of like the C-suite, again, that you shared earlier. I think when we get to larger organizations, it's usually rooted in history. So very old organizations, like we're a 100-year-old company, and we've been doing this the same way for 100 years. We're not going to change. You can't necessarily threaten them. Hey, if you don't do this, you're going to go out of business. They're going to say, well, we've been around for 100 years, so we've been doing it the same way. But what they do see, and most all of them will admit, is that they do see a shift in how their consumers are engaging with them. And oftentimes they may be stable, but they're not growing anymore. And I had a really eye-opening conversation once with a CTO of a very large organization that has been around for 120 plus years, and basically said, we've been doing it the same way for 120 years. We're not going to change. And I said, but are you losing customers? And they said, no, we're not losing customers. We're making the same amount of money. And I said, do you want to make more money? And they said, no. They said, no, we are perfectly fine with doing the things that we've been doing, the way we've been doing it, and basically meeting status quo. And we're okay not growing. And to me, it was a fabulous response, really eye-opening, because it's like, this is the first time I've ever heard a company say that they're not interested in growing their revenue. And you could have a lot of arguments with that, but that was their decision.
Well, I met a couple of founders, and actually in Poland, of quite a big company that is very analog and is visiting all their customers by road, and they really had to change their approach during the pandemic. What would be your biggest piece of advice for getting started with digital transformation to convince the unconverted ones?
Yeah, well, I would say that they're in a digital space currently, whether they realize it or not, or whether they want to accept it or not, right? Even I've often thrown out this concept. I have nothing really to back it up, but I've thrown out a concept that 100%, that's how confident I am, 100% of all companies in the world are digital companies. And I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of people who would argue that. But at the root of every single company today, somewhere, somehow, in some form, you are transacting digitally. Even if that is, I've accepted a payment by check or by cash, you still have to deposit that into a bank account. And as soon as you deposit it into a bank account, you have become a digital business, or you're using digital tools within your business. And the fact is that we are surrounded by technology. There's no way that you could possibly do business today without technology. Even if you've got children in your homes that are 9 years old and they wake up and say, I'm going to start my own business making jewelry and selling it to my friends, I guarantee you somewhere they've leveraged technology like YouTube to watch how to make jewelry or something so that they can sell it. Like it's everywhere. We can't avoid it. And for people to say, well, we're not going to use it, it doesn't make any sense, because it's there and everybody is going to want to use it. And so I think you have to begin just thinking, like, what's the starting point of this journey? And it can be as something as simple as, we all have phones in our hands. You know, I've got a phone here and I send text messages, or I send emails, or I take phone calls. I take phone calls from my customers, and I usually take phone calls from my customers on my device. I've got a calendar that's on my device to show me who I'm going to chat with next. And it may be a partner, it may be a customer. I've got email messages for supporting my products. It's starting somewhere. And as soon as you start to understand that, then you can start thinking about, well, now, how can I use this phone to be able to do more with my customers, or to automate the experience? A great example, like if you are, you have your own business, and let's just say it's like a consultant type of role, or maybe you're an attorney, or maybe you're a hairstylist. You know, it could be anything. There's plenty of free tools that are online now that will allow you to book sessions with people and have all of that be done automatically, and come to your phone and set up into your calendar system so that you know who your next client is. And you can constantly start to evolve that type of mindset and become more digital as you progress. There are people that are saying, well, we're not a digital company, and they're spending days on a process that could take a system, a couple of seconds to achieve for you. So what would you be able to accomplish if you had an extra 5 hours every day because you were doing this same task manually? And those are the questions you have to start looking at and asking and addressing. And I think soon you'll be able to find a starting point where you can say, okay, well, I'm going to change this one little thing, and I'll just see how it goes. And then you'll get into the mindset of doing that one little thing, and then you can go from there.
I think it's a very much of a change of behavior, and it's a challenge. As we know, we like to use the common patterns. That's probably why we have so many car crashes, because people do not pay attention when they go to work and they go their usual route without checking the road. There is a reason why this is called smartphone, and the reason probably is quite visible, because we have automation. I can ask, hey Google, find me Chris Hood, and it's already trying to find me the answer. Now, Chris, what are the most common mistakes people make when implementing digital transformation?
Not looking at the data. that's really that's the biggest one. I'll give you a great example. So I was working several years ago. I was helping somebody with a startup business, and it was an online e-commerce store. And the owner of the company came up to me and said, we're losing orders. We're not making enough sales. And I believe that the checkout system is too confusing. And because it's too confusing, people are going through the checkout process and they're abandoning their carts and they're not buying our products because they just get too confused, too frustrated, and they leave. So I want to change the checkout process. And I asked, do you know that? And they said, yes, I'm confident that's what it is. And I asked again, how do you know that? And they're like, well, I've done it myself and it's confusing to me. So if it's confusing to me, it's going to be confusing to other people. And so let's change it. I go, I don't think it's the checkout process. Well, what do you think it is? I go, I don't know, but I don't think it's the checkout process. Why don't we find out? Well, how are we going to find out? My suggestion is let's put into the store a survey as to why you did not check out. Why did you not purchase your product today? And also, how about if we add a coupon that says like, hey, 15% off your next order if you fill out this survey. So give us some feedback. We'll give you a coupon, and then maybe we can convert those sales into new opportunities. So the owner was like, no, I don't want to do a survey that's cheesy. It's like, just do it. Like, just trust me here. So we put the survey on, and the question was, why did you not complete your order? And I gave 5 responses. So it was, the checkout process was too confusing, or I did not find enough information on the product I wanted, or, like there was clothes, so the sizes didn't fit, or the cost was too expensive, right? So we did that, and we got about 10,000 responses. 10,000 is quite a lot of responses.
It is.
And it gives us an indication now, a really strong indication as to why. The number one reason why was that the price of the product was too expensive. And that was by like 75+%. So 75% of the people said it was too expensive, and so they did not make the purchase. And only like 1% said the checkout process was too confusing. So I presented the data back to the CEO, the owner of the company, and they said, the price is fine, let's change the checkout process. And that business went out of business about 3 months later because they refused to listen to the data. They refused to adjust the prices of the product. And as a result, they never got the sales. When what they could have done was just adjusted the price of the product, they would have gotten sales and they probably would have grown and stayed in business. But it all boiled down to one fact. They had an opinion. We had data to back up that opinion or to counter the opinion, and they did not listen to it. And the biggest challenge for every single organization is to not only capture that data and look at it, but then to listen to it and then make adjustments based on what the data actually says. Don't believe you know what it is. Don't just assume you want to make a change because you believe you want to make the change because it's your idea. Remove your own personal bias from that and make a change based on what the data says, and you're always going to get a better product.
Well, as Simon Preston says, the biggest part of our digital transformation is changing the way we think. Chris, we are heading towards the end of our show. I wanted to ask you, what is your number one advice for or strategy for problem solving?
Problem solving is try again, fail, and keep trying. Problem solving is understanding I don't know what the problem is, and so I've got to do some investigation, figure out what it is, and then try something to solve it. And a lot of people want to get from like A to Z without worrying about the rest of the stuff in between. And oftentimes it's not that simple. Very rarely have I seen something and said, oh, that's the problem, and then boom, solve it, right? Problem solving is the systematic process of testing something, testing a thesis of hypothesis, and validating it with data. The results is the data, right? So prime example to the story I just shared with you. I could, instead of doing a survey, which was the fastest way to get data, I could have said, okay, let's change the registration or the checkout process, did all that work, made that change, and then analyzed it, got data back, did it work, did it not work, and then tried a different change, right? And kept going down that approach and never actually getting to the right solution. But ultimately, it's systematic. You've got to be able to say, we're going to try this, get data, understand the data, make the adjustment, try something different, get data, make the adjustment, and repeat. And if you can get into that mode of trying, failing, learning, and then trying again, repeating, that's the best process. You're on mute. Or we've lost your audio.
No, we are back here. I'm
Yes.
so sorry. I was just so fascinated by the data story. You have a lot of data about females in the workplace, in the IT sphere. What advice would you give to them to help their career or start an entrepreneurial journey? With digital or without digital?
My advice is the same for everyone. Follow your passions, do things that you want to and do that inspire you, learn continuously to learn and grow. And if you want to be happy and content and successful, just keep doing the things you love to do. And I will always say that You're going to enjoy your job and your career. And I mean, this is not rocket science. Probably 100 people have said it before me. Just do what makes you happy, right? Follow your passions and make your passions a part of your daily job. This, like what we're having, this conversation and talking, is a passion of mine. I love having these types of conversations. And so I'm thrilled that I get to do it all the time. So never just go and do something because, hey, that job description sounds good, or hey, this seems easy. Would you rather have an easy job that you hate or a challenging job that you love? And I would argue that the challenging job that you love will always win out.
Absolutely. Chris, I'm mindful of you have something planned for later during the day. Are you working on anything exciting apart from your podcast and the event that is coming up today?
Yeah, I have an event with 100 people coming in and that I've got to host and speak at. I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be a fabulous event. But what am I working on? I'm actually writing a book right now, or I've written a book. I've gone through multiple rounds of editing and continue to edit. I woke up one day and thought, I'm going to write a book. And I had never written a book before in my life or even knew what was involved in that. That was 5 years ago. and I'm still working on it. It's a fantasy fiction book, so it's not even about business or technology. This is all fantasy and fiction and some really exciting things. It follows the adventure of a 13-year-old girl who gets transported into a world of monsters and has to help the monsters understand the meaning of humanity. So I think it's fabulous, and the people who have read it really love it. But just going through the process of editing and adjusting and learning and failing and relearning and rewriting, it's been really exhausting and exciting at the same time.
Well, Chris, I keep our fingers crossed. A 13 years old girl who's a leader in the futuristic world is definitely something we like to watch, not just the Jetsons. That shows our age, doesn't it, Chris?
Yeah. Well, I'll even add, there's so many, if we look at all the movies and even the books and stories that are out there, you usually have the protagonist, the hero of the book, being, very stereotypical. You've got a 13-year-old girl who ultimately is like the princess, or a 13-year-old girl who is a wizard, or the 13-year-old girl who is the chosen one, right? You have all these kind of storylines, and I wanted to create a story where the 13-year-old girl was just a 13-year-old girl. Wasn't a princess, wasn't a mermaid, because I wanted individuals, females or men, to be able to read this and relate to it. We could read other books and say, oh, I would love to be a wizard. I would love to be a witch. I would love to be a mermaid. I would love to be a princess. And I would love to be able to pretend that I am those things, but I'm not. I'd rather have somebody read a book and say, oh, that's me. I'm that type of person, and all the struggles of everyday life that they go through and the adventures and how they would evolve and transform themselves into a person in a real, type of capacity beyond being a chosen one, I think is critical type of story to tell.
Absolutely. So what is the number one book you can sit and think, oh, I wish I read it before I started my career with Google?
That's good. But I will recommend a book. There's a fabulous book it's actually a Google inspired book. So not that I'm really pitching this, but it's by an author called Jake Knapp. That's it. And the book is called Sprint, 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 solving big problems with new ideas in 5 days. And it basically shows you how you can begin to transform businesses and ideas and make them bigger in 5 days, and all the different types of processes and steps that you might go through. So a lot of the things that we've talked about today, you can find in that book, and it gives you a really clean outline and map of like, do this on day 1, do this on day 2, all the way through 5 days, and how you can evolve these new ideas and make them bigger in 5 days. It's really fabulous and a great starting point for anybody looking to transform.
Beautiful. Can you give us your life lesson quote and how did it change you?
I feel like we're on a cartoon spin today, so I'll use the immortal words of Queen Elsa in the movie Frozen, let it go.
Beautiful. I see inspiration from, do I take it right? You might have a daughter.
I have 2 daughters. Yeah.
There you go. That's my feminine intuition for you. Imagine the pandemic is over and you can invite any person to have a breakfast anywhere in the world. Where would you go to and who would you invite to have this private breakfast with?
You know, I'm going to have to counter this and add in anybody living or dead, because I always say that the person who I would love to have breakfast or lunch or dinner with the most would be Albert Einstein. I mean, I would just have loved to sit down with that guy. And I've often had this question asked, like, if you could pick 3 people to have lunch with, you know, living or dead, like, who would that be? And it's usually something like Bill Gates, Steven Spielberg, and Albert Einstein. You know, like getting those 3 in the room would be fabulous. So yeah, and probably in Paris, you know, have some nice breakfast at a cafe somewhere countryside near Paris would be fabulous.
Well, Chris, I hope you will enjoy your breakfast in the meantime with your lovely daughters. Thank you very much, daughters, for the inspiration to your daddy. And that's it from episode 84 of PhD Livestream. Thank you very much, Chris Hood. To stay updated and ensure you never miss a positivity hack delivered, follow Woman on It and turn on notifications to be alerted once a video has been released. When digital transformation is done right, it's like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. When done wrong, all you have is a really fast caterpillar, George Westerman says. As always, our positivity quote comes from positive thinking only and goes, look for something positive in each day, even if some days you have to look a little harder. Next week, we are going to be joined by Charlotte Fuller, and we are going to talk about how to build a bulletproof confidence for your career. This is your day to hack the future. This is your day to hack and digitally transform your business. Thank you very much.